Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Kelly's Chronicles. So happy that we have all of you back here with us again this week. Sorry we had to kind of take a little bit of a break here. We were doing some moving. Danny and I, my husband and I, we moved into a new fifth wheel camper, and we started a new tour. So we're now out with Alex Warren, and so it's a really tiny tour. There's only 5 trucks. It's been pretty fun so far, and that's pretty much what we've been doing for the last month. We took a little bit of a 2-week break. How have you been, Dad? Chuck?
Well, I'm, as you know, in Idaho, and winter is coming like a freight train.
Oh boy.
We've already had frost. We had frost 2 weeks ago.
Ooh.
So the middle of September is usually frost date, and we've passed that. Now it's down in the 40s, but we've got rain coming tonight and tomorrow. A lot of rain, probably an inch or so. And they have monsoons here that come up through Arizona and Utah, and so the weather comes in from the south a lot of times. And so we're going to have, I think we're going to have a fairly mild winter with less snow than normal. That's what the
Really?
long range predictions are, is a warm winter with limited snow, but it's still Idaho. Historically, they have had 40 below zero here, and we had 2 winters ago, we had 5 foot of snow everywhere.
Oh yeah.
We had 8-foot drifts. I mean, it was crazy, and that could happen. I mean, weather is weather. It's unpredictable to a certain extent. I mean, the weathermen think they've got it all, and I was a weatherman in the Coast Guard, and believe me, there was many times when I would make a prediction and say, "Yeah, Captain, we're not worried. We got good weather steaming back to Florida," and it would be like 10-foot seas and wind, and he'd go, "Olson." That prediction really sucked. I mean, come on, you can do better than that.
Chuck,
Yeah,
what
you
is
don't
this?
know.
I think when it comes to weather, you can just pick up the almanac, and that's about as much as you can trust it. So
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
come a long way, though. It's come a long way. It's a lot better than what it used to be. So.
Yep.
Just saying. Well, I know that you and Mom really you work hard throughout the summer, and especially Mom in the garden and with the animals, and then you pretty much prep yourself for the winter season, which can be pretty intense in Idaho, but it's still also a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoy coming to Idaho when it is wintertime because I love the snow. So
Yep. It's beautiful.
we're gonna be there this Christmas, my husband and I, and the rest of our family. So be all the Olsons back together again for the most part, and we're gonna have a really awesome Christmas, and it's gonna be fun. So I'll be able to enjoy the snow, and it'll be great. So we're gonna kind of do a short video today because we've been having some technical issues every single week that we've tried to do this. So we had audio issues, we've had video issues, we have had internet issues, we have had actual program issues. So today it's going to be pretty short. And we're just going to tell just a couple of really fun stories. We're going to tell about 4 or 5 different stories from when you, Dad, came from Alaska down to Georgia, and then we're going to finish it out. So it's going to be kind of a short video only because we're testing this new program. We're testing out Boomcaster. I did some research, and it seems to be pretty good. Seems to be a fairly good running program, and everyone on Reddit was speaking very highly of it. So I decided to use this program for us today. So So, Dad, the last time that we were on here, we were talking about you being up in Alaska and you guys were coming down from Alaska to Georgia. Your dad had gotten his orders to move him and the family. So, we'll start off with that. So, we'll start off with from what base to what base did your dad get his orders?
Okay, he was in Elmendorf Air Force Base in Anchorage, Alaska, and he got orders to probably the most opposite place that you could possibly imagine, to Moody Air Force Base in southern Georgia. So it went from Alaska to southern Georgia, and it's the trek is, I don't, thousands of miles. I don't know, because we came across from Anchorage. There's a road that goes from Anchorage to the Alaskan Highway, and it comes in Tok, Alaska, which is uh, several hundred miles from Anchorage, and it's just west of the Yukon frontier border there. That's where Canada starts. About, I would say, probably about 50 miles, maybe 100 miles, where Tok is located. And you have to understand that the Alaskan Highway was built during World War II because the Japanese came up and they took a couple of islands in the Aleutian. They took um, Kiska and Attu in the Aleutian
Mm,
island chain, and the
okay,
military freaked out and started fortifying Alaska like you wouldn't believe. And part of that
absolutely.
fortification was to build a highway so they could bring supplies up to Anchorage and resupply their bases. And
Mm,
it had only been, it was like when we came, it was like 10 years old. We
so
came
fresh.
down in 54, and the highway was built like in 44. So we were pioneers, and the road was
Mm,
hideous. It was awful. It was dirt. There
Walnut
was
Road.
rocks in the road. There were places where there would be landslides coming down out of the mountains,
Oh my
and
gosh.
there was rocks the size of your head laying in the middle of the road. If you'd hit them with a car, it ripped the whole front of the car off.
Ah,
And there was
yikes.
animals all over the road. There was mountain goats, mountain sheep, bears, goose, everything wandering across the road. So Dad had to be vigilant at all times because he could come around a turn and there'd be a, you know, 2,000-pound moose standing in the middle of the road. He had to be
Yikes.
careful as a driver to avoid the rocks and the landslides and the wild critters, and kind of in association with all that, we were leaving Alaska in the spring. I have to do some research, but I think it was like June, June, about that, May or June.
Yeah.
Um, we got up. We were in. Okay, we crossed over into Canada, and we got down in, I'm not sure if it was in the Yukon or actually in Alberta, British Columbia, because it goes down, the highway goes down to Dawson Creek. That's where it starts in Canada. But that's above, I think that's above British
British
Columbia.
Columbia. Yes.
And then
Yeah,
it
it's above
cuts across,
British Columbia.
and it cuts, and then there's a road that cuts across into Alberta and goes down to because Alberta borders on Montana. So
Hmm.
either, go that way, or you could go through British Columbia and go down to Seattle. But we were going to, like, down toward Denver, down into east. We're actually going to eastern Colorado, so we needed to be over further east, and it's coming down through. So we were somewhere up in that northern part of the provinces up there, and it was still springtime, and it was a bridge that was just totally destroyed by the ice breakup. And I'm not sure, like I said, I'm not sure where it was, but the Mounties were there. The Northwest Mounted Police were there. in all of their
Your
glory,
red
and
jacket.
they said the bridge is closed. You can't go across this bridge, and it was kind of. I got a slide of it somewhere, and you can see where it's tilted, like
Yay!
about
Ah!
probably about 15 or 20 degrees over on one side, where it wiped out the pilings underneath the bridge on that side. And
Thanks.
so the Mountie said, "No, you can't cross it." Well, if that was true, if we couldn't cross the bridge, we would have had to backtrack. I don't know how far back to get another road, because that was the only road. Period. Dirt road. That's it. No. So
Way out in the middle of
Dad
nowhere.
was just as a kind of a aside. Dad was a huge rodeo fan. He loved rodeos, and his dream was to go to the Calgary Stampede in Calgary, Alberta,
Oh,
Canada. And it was like he had kind of, I think he had planned this whole trip to make it to Calgary for the Stampede.
oh,
He had the timetable was all set up, and so this bridge was out. If he would have had to backtrack, it would have been he'd have missed it totally. He would have been out of it. So
yeah.
we sat there. I think we were there a couple of days, like 2 or 3 days,
Whoa,
just
that's a long time.
and there's no chance this bridge is going to be open anytime soon. The bridge basically was gone. It was demolished, and it's just a matter of coming in and tearing it down. But it was beyond repair. So about one night, I'm not sure exactly what time, but him and a couple of there was other families there stranded, other people.
Yeah.
And so one night we had found a ford across the river. And a ford is a shallow spot, usually with either gravel or rock or something on the bottom. So you go into it, you're not going to get stuck in the mud. You're on rock or gravel. And they found this
Mm,
ford, and they went up and that night we forded the river. And
okay.
you have to understand, we had a 1950 Buick Roadmaster, is a giant monster car, but it wasn't 4-wheel drive. It was just a car, a sedan for highways.
Yeah.
And we forded the river along with these other people and went down and came across and got on the road on the other side of the river and headed on down south. And we were down somewhere in, like I said, down in either northern British Columbia or Alberta, and the roads were dirt, and it was pretty bad. And Dad was just tootling along, heading for Calgary, and this guy passed us on the left side, and as he was passing us, he hit a mud puddle, and the dad had his window down, and this mud, water, slime came into the car and just wiped
Oh,
out the inside of the car. I mean, it was
no.
mud on everything, on the dashboard, the inside of the windshield, and we had a bar across the back seat with all of our clothes, like all of Dad's uniforms and Mom's dresses,
Oh,
and it just sprayed all those with mud all over the seat. Even got me. I was in the back seat, and it still got me. And I don't know what they had to do to clean up, but somehow we got back on the road, headed for Calgary. And I swear, if Dad could have caught that guy, he was an ex-Marine. He would have done
killed
bad
him.
things. That
Good
guy
for
would have
him.
definitely been history. Dad would have caught him. And he was probably unaware of what he did, but still, Dad was
Yeah.
going on with this story. We continued on our journey, and we missed the Calgary Stampede by about 2 or 3 days, if I remember right, because it goes on for like a week. It's this rodeo for a week, and
That.
it's and he missed it, and he was pretty sad. But we went on down and got
Oh,
down to my grandmother's his mother's house, and his mother and father, and house in Burlington, Colorado, and I think we stayed there for about a week, if I remember right. And it
Yeah.
was, for me, it was like heaven. The mulberries were in there. Mulberries were, they had, grandma and grandpa had a row of about 5 or 6 huge mulberry trees right next to
Oh, really?
right paralleled the road, right, and it was like
Oh,
they had like a little parking space by the trees, but generally it was just this row of beautiful, and I love mulberries. I come in the house, I have mulberries, juice. Yeah, you did.
yeah, of course not.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was wonderful, and the grasshoppers were out, and I like to mess with it because they had these. They call them Arkansas travelers. They were huge. They were locusts, and they were like
oh,
3 inches long. They were huge grasshoppers.
oh,
I didn't. I don't think. No, I didn't have a BB gun then, but I was throwing rocks at them and everything. Yeah, I was at war with
best
these
time.
locusts. But it was just so good being with my grandmother. She was my surrogate mother. Uh, I
Mhm.
lived with her from the time I was born until I was about 3 or 4. I think
Mhm.
3. Yeah, between 3 and 4. And Dad got recalled to the Marines and went out to California, and we had to leave Grandma. And but
Yeah,
that was pretty exciting because we got to ride the Silver Zephyr from Denver to
that's right.
LA. So
That's right.
that's
We
another
loved that
story.
story when we heard
But
that.
yeah, and
Well, I
I
think
wanted. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I think Grandpa would be proud because we actually did a show at the Calgary Rodeo Stadium that they have over there.
Okay.
We actually did a show there for Kings of Leon,
Yeah, it's a
and
big deal.
yeah,
I think the
I didn't
whole
realize how
town
big of a
turns
deal it
out
was.
for that. I think
Yeah,
it's like a carnival for the whole town. They just
yeah.
oh, and you were up there. You know more about it than I do because
Oh, it's
we haven't been
huge.
back to Calgary since then. So
So
when we came,
I stood in proxy for him. I didn't get to see the actual rodeo, but I did stand where the rodeo actually
yeah,
takes place.
yeah, and
So,
it's like billboards and it's all over town. I mean,
oh, yeah, oh
it's a
yeah,
it's a
it's
big
huge.
and that's a pretty good sized town too. Calgary is what, a couple
Oh
hundred
yeah,
thousand
Calgary's
people. Yeah,
beautiful. I have a friend
it's,
that actually lives there. Catherine. Well, she's Catherine Schneed. Schneed. I think that's her last name. But I met her husband the last time we went there, and
yeah,
we went out for a really nice dinner. But I mean, we were driving through the city, and I was like, "This is a gorgeous city." And
yeah,
her husband was telling us about the architecture because he knows a lot about it, and they're very proud of their city, which I
yeah,
absolutely respect and love to see somebody that loves their city.
yeah.
So,
It's not as big as Edmonton, but it's a pretty good sized
no,
city, and that's all. There's like a right in the center of Alberta. There's a Peace River that runs down. I think between Calgary and Edmonton, it heads off somewhere, but that Peace River Valley is a big grain. I mean, they grow
yes,
lots of wheat and raise lots of cattle, and it is fairly moderate climate because of where it's at and having that river there to kind of hold things down. It doesn't. I don't think it gets as nasty as it does out west of there in the Canadian Rockies, but yeah, it's quite the deal.
yeah, it's really
Beautiful
pretty out
country.
there. It's really pretty. But yeah, I've been through there several times. It's really
Yeah.
beautiful. So you stopped off at Grandma and Grandpa's like you always do when you guys are
Mm-hmm.
traveling,
Yep.
and then you headed on into Georgia. And
Yep.
so your dad went to um, Moody. Air Force Base, correct?
Right.
Down in Valdosta
Yep.
or Valdesta. I don't know how they pronounce it. Valdosta,
You got it right.
Georgia. I
Valdosta.
got it right.
You got to have an ER, and then it's got to be Valdosta.
Valdosta. Okay.
Yeah, Valdosta.
Okay.
And you also just, it's like,
Valdosta.
like you're saying, like Huntsville. You don't say Huntsville, you say Huntsville. And that's same
Huntsville.
in Georgia. Valdosta. Yeah.
Valdosta. Like Fayetteville from where Bentonville, where I grew up.
Yep. Yep.
Gotta have that Arkansas accent in there. So you guys headed on down to Georgia, and you had mentioned that you guys lived really close to the swamp.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand that southern Georgia, that part of southern Georgia has a huge national park, the Okefenokee Swamp National. I think it's a national park. It may be a wildlife. Anyway, it's huge. It's almost the whole southeastern corner of Georgia is swamp, and in kind of at one time, I think the swamp was a lot bigger. I think a lot of it had been drained, and they grew tobacco and peanuts and stuff down there.
Oh
But
wow.
there was a swamp called Banks Lake, which was we were in Bemis, Georgia. That's where we lived, or Barrett's, maybe Barrett. Yeah, Barrett's. I think we were in Barrett's, Georgia, which is about 2 or 3 miles north of the air base. And this Banks Lake is over in like it's a swamp that's over a couple of miles from where we were living, and it was full of alligators and water moccasins and lungfish and all kinds of weird stuff. And
Lungfish.
you could hear the gators at night. They're like a big frog. They croak like a frog at night, and I guess they're
Oh, that probably
mating
sounds
call or
scary.
whatever. And bugs of just every kind of insect you could think of, and frogs, and tree frogs, and stuck. And a tree frog has got like suction cups in his feet, and he could stick on
Oh
the.
yeah.
And we were in a trailer, in an aluminum trailer, and these tree frogs would stick to the side of the trailer, going after the bugs. And,
Oh, that's funny.
I had a pet flying squirrel for a while. There was all kinds of neat stuff there. So
Oh
yeah, it
wow. I
was.
didn't know you had a flying squirrel
He had a little
as
pet
a
and
pet.
had a little cage. Dad made a little
Aw.
cage and a little pet flying squirrel in there. And I kept him for maybe a month, and he was just like freaking out,
He was
never
all over
held
the place.
still. So I finally just
Yeah.
let him go, and he went out
You're
and
like, you go be
got in the
free.
trees, and
Yeah, you
yeah, and
kind of
there
have to
was
raise squirrels from babies, or they're kind of crazy.
yeah,
They're not very loyal.
yeah, and as an aside, Moody Air Force Base was the training school for the Air Force all-weather fighter interceptors. So
Mm,
they were training pilots to fly in all kinds of weather, no matter what. They want those planes in the
yikes.
air, and the pilots would come out of that school, and they would deploy to the entire Air Force. And the Air Force had, at that time, of course, the Russians were a big threat, and they had big bomber fleets that were going to come bomb us and everything. And they had a DEW line, distant early warning radar line, up in the northern United States and up into Canada to detect the Russians coming across the Arctic Circle to bomb
Mm,
us. It was all those days. It was just, I mean, we would
wow.
have drills in school where you get under your desk, and cover your.
Ah,
Yeah, it
yeah,
was crazy stuff, and
the
because
era of the bomb
that was
shelter.
the big time Cold War, and
Yeah.
these pilots that come out of this school were to go up into Canada, wherever, and if there's a blizzard, no, we didn't care. We're gonna fly. Boom. We're gonna go
Right.
intercept those bombers, and so, and they would routinely crash these planes because they were back then. It was like the beginning of the jet age. It was like the jets were only been used like 10 years, and
Oh wow.
these were some these were terrible, undependable pieces of flying junk that they would put these pilots in and say, fly the plane. And, it would,
It's
all
kind of
kinds
like
of
they
bad
were like
things,
the test
all
dummies,
kinds of
huh?
bad things would happen. Yeah. And, they had this crash zone, right? Like we were only a quarter of a mile from not from anyway, the planes would come in and they would turn and the landing lights would shine right in my bedroom. And
Oh,
the end of the runway was about a mile, maybe 2 miles away. So they were making their final approach and to come in and land. And they would, if they had problems, they were trained to crash into the swamp, this 30,000 acre crash zone. And that was fine. But that crash zone was this freaking swamp. That was Banks Lake and some of the surrounding swamp. And it was full of gators and snakes and all kinds of
scary
stuff.
stuff.
As a matter of fact, they had, as one of the stories I'll probably tell in the future, they had a game warden, an Air Force game warden, a guy
Oh,
named Woods, Sergeant Woods. And Sergeant Woods was born and raised in southern Georgia, I think. And he knew that like the back of his hand. And they had these, and in the swamp, they had crash roads that went out into the swamp. So when the plane would crash, they would have an approximate location, they had big radars, and they would know approximately where the plane crashed. And they would go underneath, they would take crash trucks and go out on these crash roads and try to find the pilot and find the plane
mm.
because they would try to salvage the plane if they could. They
Oh, of
would try to
course.
pick it up, get it up and
Get
get
the
it on a
parts.
flatbed and pull it out of there. But oh, it was those poor pilots, man. They were out there, and there was cypress trees everywhere and pine trees everywhere, and they would get caught in these freaking trees and parachutes all up in the tree because you bail out. It's like, oh, let's see. I think I will choose. I will bail out over that. No, you bail. You
Just
just
bail.
get that ejection seat, boom, and
Ah,
you have no idea where you're going to land. Whether you're going to land in your chute comes out automatically. You can't steer them. Those chutes they're just a big. Back then, I mean, now they have steerable chutes, but back then
no,
it
it's
was
just like a
just
shoot.
a big canopy, and that you went straight down, and that was it. You was no steering or anything. So you landed. The pilots
Primitive.
land in trees and everything, and they would crash fairly regularly. They would. You'd have about I would say a crash every month or two. You would have a
Yes,
plane
please.
going down somewhere in the swamp.
Crashes.
I saw planes. I saw planes crash. I saw them catch on fire and
Ah.
go down and crash, and a big black cloud would come up. And
Oh,
okay,
God.
they would periodically die too. The pilots would.
Yeah,
They had a kind of a short lifespan, and
which isn't
there
good
was
because pilots are not a dime a dozen. I tell you that
yeah
they are very rare, and it takes a lot of training, and they're a
yeah
good pilot is hard to come by.
yeah. I had one day we were out. We had my one of my playmates there. We were out sitting. There was like a little ditch by our trailer, and we were out there reclining on the ditch, just talking. And we looked over in this plane, I'll tell you, it was an F-89, which is a twin engine Air Force jet, and it was a fighter jet. And it was flying in on its final approach, and all of a sudden it flamed. If you could hear it flame out, the engine stopped. And so we watched it. The canopy came off, co-pilot comes out, and then the pilot came out. And their chutes open, they're drifting down. And then that plane, when they got out, they had purposely tilted it to I guess it would be to the east, and it went down over the swamp.
Mm.
And about 5 seconds, 10 seconds later, we heard this. explosion, and then this big black cloud came up over the wreck site, and the pilot and the co-pilot went over and into this down the road, basically down the road from where we lived, and Dad went over and picked up the pilot, and he drove his car over and picked the pilot up, and he got in trouble for that because they said the crash crew came out looking for him, and he wasn't there. He was back at the base. Dad took him back to the base. Maybe bought him a Coke or something. And you know,
Olsen,
where's the pilot? Where's the pilot? And they're looking around for him. Yeah. Anyway,
that's kind of funny.
yeah, that was.
When these pilots would crash, when they would crash into the swamp, would they be like attacked by animals? Like, was that an occasional occurrence of getting attacked by
like food from the sky? Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, if they will say they,
a lot of times,
they were,
say they were
fortunate enough to not land in a tree. Say they were fortunate enough to land. Well, most of this area was covered with water. There was some dry areas, but the majority of the crash zone was water. And if you have water in South Georgia, you're going to have alligators, and you're going to have snakes, and you're going to have bugs, and you're going to have, all that. And these pilots, and they're not really equipped for survival. I mean, they've got their flight suits, and they're pretty much, they're equipped to fly the plane, not to survive in the swamp. And sometimes it would take the better part of a day, sometimes longer, for those to be recovered, for the crash crew to find him. And I mean, he had flares and stuff where he could, signal his position. But say he had a broken leg, or or he was on a tree, he may not have the ability to, or even the mental ability, because if you're injured, or they're probably petrified, scared, because the 1 minute they're flying, the next minute they're in a swamp, probably psychologically freaked out, and that was a bad I think if I was a pilot in the Air Force, I would ejected one time and say, "That's it, I'm done. I'm not flying.
I'm good.
I'm done.
You either ship me off somewhere else.
I want to issue volleyballs. I'm tired of this stuff."
I mean, I guess I understand the military wants to try and toughen up these men or women. Nowadays we have a lot more women in the military, but I mean,
it was all men.
Yeah, it was all men. I definitely understand, like, maybe making it kind of like an obstacle kind of thing, of putting them over the swamp, and making it where they almost like a hell week for the Marines when they're in training. Hell week in the swamps of Georgia, because I mean, we drive on the roads past those things. We see it, but when you get down into it, it is terrifying. There's a lot of scary stuff down there, and now they have more like bigger and meaner, scarier snakes down there nowadays.
They have
constrictors, but I mean, I think that's crazy. Would they give them like knives? Did they have machetes to like fight off the alligators? Like, they're just like, here you go in the swamps. It's almost like sending you off into the Amazonian jungle. Like,
really,
all right,
exactly. Yeah, I think they had sidearms. I think all pilots carried 45s. But whether that pistol, ejection from an aircraft. Now they were only probably doing, when they ejected, they were probably like doing 200 miles an hour. But still, I would say coming out, and a lot of times when they would eject, they would have broken bones. They would, because it's violent, and you come out of
Yeah.
there, and if you don't have your arms
Oh,
in the correct position, you'll catch part of the aircraft as you come out,
yeah, break your
and the
arm.
guys would have broken collarbones and fractured skulls and all. I
Yeah.
mean, it was violent. It was violent, and then to land in a swamp on top of that after that experience was, I mean, very traumatic. I'm sure that I think it was intentional. I think that they were prepping these guys to put up with anything. They were prepping them to
Oh yeah.
be
That's what I was
survivors
saying.
no matter what, because they could have had this base in like Texas. They would have been bailing out over sagebrush,
Oh
and
yeah. That's
it
what
would
I'm
have been
saying
it
is
would have been
like
a lot nicer for the pilots that had to eject. But I think that
they wanted them tough.
they wanted to have that experience for those pilots, knowing that when they eject, they're going to go into a swamp, and they're going to be critters in there that like to
That would eat you.
chew on you. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of funny because there was a senator either a senator or a representative from Georgia, and he was on the Armed Services Subcommittee, and this is back in the 50s, and
Mm.
they were threatening to close Moody Air Force Base, and there's about 3 or 4 big Air Force bases in Georgia. Moody was just one of them, and they were threatening to close it. And he said, as long as I'm a congressman from the great state of Georgia, no military installation will close in my state. So he said, no, you're not going to close Moody. And he gave him $10 million. He said, here's
Oh,
$10 million. You spend it any way you want, but understand that you're not going anywhere. We're not closing your base. So if you want to, build something new and nice, it's fine because you get $10 million. And that's back in the 50s. That's a lot of
that's a
money.
lot of money back in
And
the
so
50s.
what
That's
they
like
did is they had they had
$100,000.
a bunch of World War II barracks. These were wooden buildings built in World War II for to put troops in, and they had a bunch of them on the base. And so they went
Mm.
in and they painted the outside, and they went inside and they put brand new tile floors down, and they put in new plumbing and everything. And then they hung a padlock on it. They did all that to those old. These were at that time still 10 years old, but they were still in good shape. But they went in
Yeah.
and renovated them, and then hung a padlock on them because they didn't need them, but they had to spend the $10 million. So they,
Could
oh
have at
yeah,
least like brought in like
yeah,
nutritious meals or like made like better, I don't know, recovery roads out in the swamps. Like could have thought of a
yeah.
lot of better ways
$10
to.
million, they could do a lot with $10 million. So they did some other
Especially back in
things.
the
But there was
50s.
one thing that my dad brought home, and he said, "Yeah, this is what the Air Force does. These buildings." He was kind of, I think he was a little bit disappointed that
Yeah.
I think he wanted the base to close.
Your
I
dad
don't
did?
think. Yes, it was this. You have to
Why?
understand it was a miserable place to work because my dad was out
Oh,
on the flight line a lot, and it would be
okay.
like 100 degrees and 100% humid. I mean, this was a swamp. This was a swamp. The Air Force Base was a drained swamp, and it was miserable for the people that had to work out. And then he got a new job. He did that for a while, and he got a new job working he was trained as a diesel mechanic by the Air Force, and so they sent him to this the power plant for this big radar. They had a big radar site that watched the planes overhead, and had
Hmm.
and had a huge diesel generator generating power for these radars. Because back then the radars, it was all new technology pretty much, and they used a lot of energy, and they really didn't have very good radar. It was like borderline, you know, fairly good, but not really good. And
Hmm. Okay.
dad's job was working on these on these huge generators to generate the power for these radar sites. And he was such a good mechanic that he improved some of the operating equipment, some of the fuel systems and other things on his diesel generators. And the Air Force said, "Oh, this." They brought in some other technicians and they looked at what he had done, and they applied for a patent. And some of these they were so revolutionary that
Wow.
that they applied for and they got a patent for these inventions that Dad had
That Grandpa helped with.
come up with. And if he would have been a civilian, he would have got big bucks for this stuff.
Yeah.
Being in the
But he was
military, they said,
military.
thank you, you did a good job,
Oh.
and that's it. He never got any. I'm sure that somewhere in the patent office there's a
Military usage
kind of
only kind of thing.
invention for diesel engines that is Harry Olson or U.S. Air Force or something patent. And yeah,
Yeah.
so
A lot of
yeah,
times they won't even put the names on it of the soldiers that just say that it's U.S. military.
mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Man, I didn't know that about
Yeah.
Grandpa. It's really cool.
Yeah,
Grandpa was really smart. He was really
Dad was
innovative.
an incredible mechanic. He was a very
That's
good
where you get.
mechanic.
You're
Yeah.
you're a very good mechanic. So that's where you got it from.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I
Yeah.
grew up with, you could fix anything when it came to a car.
Carrying on the family
So
tradition.
that's right. That's pretty cool. Well, that gets us right into Georgia. I'm really excited about Georgia. We got a lot of fun stories that we've got to tell from Georgia, and
Yeah.
you're kind of really starting off into your boyhood, to becoming a teenager when you're in Georgia.
Yep.
You start making friends and you start having a lot more memories because, of course, you're older. So,
Yeah.
like I said, this is going to be pretty short. So we're at about 43 minutes now. So we're gonna wrap this up for this week. Hopefully, I don't have any issues with editing and getting this posted on YouTube for all you guys. We're fingers crossed that this is our new program that we can use and that we won't have any more problems, because we sure do love doing this every week. And I love coming on here and chit-chatting, telling stories. It is one of our favorite things to do right now. We're having a blast with it. Even when we don't get a post every week, you bet I'm calling Dad and calling you up and seeing how you're doing for the week. So keeping you updated. So we are gonna wrap this up. We hope you all have a great week. Please be safe out there with all the chaos and craziness on these roadways, and just do something fun and have a great time with your families. And we will see you next week on Saturday.